at the Backstreet, episode 6.
Make some
with,
noise.
woo, with the beautiful and talented songstress, Alicia Renee, aka Blue Eyes. How you doing today?
Alright. Hey.
So go ahead and introduce yourself and tell the people where you're from.
Well, my name is Alicia Renee, aka Blue Eyes. Nickname for being born black with natural blue eyes. Nothing wrong with color contacts, but no, this is how God made me. So this is where the name comes from. I lived here in New Orleans since 2017, originally from Flint, Michigan, by way of Chicago, by way of New York, 10 years in Switzerland, and been here since 2017.
Okay, so tell us about your music history. When did you first started indulging into music?
At the age of 2, like many African American, black people, black Americans in America, started in church, singing in the choir, as well as studying opera as a child, maybe at the beginning of 6, opera, piano, flute, clarinet, trumpet, since I was 6 years old. So music has been part of my life as a baby.
Okay, so define your music to me. What is your music like?
In one word, I would just say soulful, but when it comes to the genres of music, here in New Orleans, it is still diverse, but like in the French Quarter, you can catch me singing behind the legendary and great Doreen Ketchens on Royal Street outside of Rouse's, where usually I sing everything from Billie Holiday to Ella to Louis to Nina Simone to Aretha Franklin to Etta James to a little Jill Scott to a little French to a little Spanish to a little Patsy Cline. I definitely like to fight against stereotypes and not be held in one box and say, oh, I'm only R&B or I'm mostly funk, I'm mostly jazz. No, I love all music. It's one word, it would just say soul, because it all comes from my soul.
Okay, so did you have a really huge presence growing up around music with your family background? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I was raised in church. Mommy woke me up listening to one of New Orleans' very own, Mahalia Jackson, most mornings, as well as gospel music and classical. And my daddy was the one that sang me to sleep, singing Nat King Cole or just playing Sarah Vaughan, Ella, John Coltrane, Miles Davis, and it's always been a part. Most of my aunts all played and cousins in the church. Either their husbands were preachers or they just all played in the church, mostly by ear.
Okay, so when did you first move to New Orleans?
And I moved to New Orleans in 2017. I was living in Switzerland, and a friend of mine had asked me to take over their gig in the French Quarter on Bourbon Street. And it took me a year to come here because I was just on some, hey, if Switzerland's good enough for Tina Turner, Josephine Baker, Nina Simone, Lee Scratch Perry, it's good enough for me. I'm loving it over here, but after a year, I finally came, and that's what brought me to New Orleans. And I was singing on Bourbon Street for a while, and I learned very quickly. Even between breaks, sometimes I would just tell the band, like, yo, just play. Even after the 15-minute break, play. And I would get in a Lyft or an Uber and go see Kermit Ruffins at Mother-in-Law Lounge, or go down to Royal Sonesta and listen to Shannon Powell. And then be back in the clubs before then. But eventually I got out of Bourbon Street because it was such a loud situation for me there. I would go hide in the bathrooms just to give my voice a break over all the, I call them happy drunk people. And again, respect to Shannon Powell and Kermit and other greats here, people started telling me, hey Blue, you don't have to play on Bourbon Street. There are many other places where they're not just going to be drunk and screaming, they're actually going to listen to you. you know, and respect what you're doing, you know. And the biggest wake-up call for me in respect to Bourbon Street but was what the security guard told me one night. He was like, let me tell you, I hear you singing Shaka, Aretha, you're wailing your heart out, and these people, and everything is loud, the system's loud, the people. He was like, what do you think's gonna happen if you lose your voice? They're gonna go get another one. What are you gonna do? He was like, you don't have to be here. Go find another spot that they'll respect you a little bit more, and they're actually there to listen to the music. And so that's how I got off Bourbon Street.
Okay. So I heard you mention a couple of great musicians' names. So would you say some of those guys were like a mentor to you? Can you talk to us about some people that mentored you and led you to music and gave you opportunities to be more forefront, like you're saying, versus just Bourbon Street?
Okay, yeah. For specifically New Orleans, it was I started playing in the Royal Sonesta at the Jazz Playhouse, and my band was Shannon Powell Trio, which consisted of Shannon Powell, Chris Severin on bass, Dave Torkanowski on keys, and Kermit was just, I would say he was like, I knew who Kermit was before I moved here, so I was just always like, wow, you know, even to this day, if I hear him or Z2 on keys, I'm just like amazed. But Kermit, he's such a down-to-earth person, and he always like, you know, gave me great advice. I remember at the very beginning, like I said, when I was on Bourbon Street, it might take me 2 days just for my vocals to recover from all that hardcore energy and loudness and, you know, the amps and everything, just all of that. And Kermit would tell me, I would just go into mother-in-law's line like, what do you do for your voice? And I was like, right now, I'm doing the crawfish from Cajuns, but what other, you know? And he was just like, you know, like, oh, you just don't talk. So I always have a lot of respect for him and Kabuki. Shout out to Kabuki, Young Spody, and rest in peace, Fat Man. So those were some of the best mentors and just people that helped me along the way since I've been here. So
okay. Tell us about one of your greatest moments in music, whether it was here in the city of New Orleans, another state, just even if it was a live performance, something privately, just tell us about a great moment.
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is me performing at the Montreux Jazz Festival in Switzerland with an artist signed to Virgin Records by the name of Dwelle. He's part of the Slum Village crew. Again, I'm originally from Flint, Michigan, so I had a friend that basically called me one day and was like, hey, I have 2 different choices. You can go on tour with Ashanti, or you can go on tour with this artist named Dwelle. You know, Dwelle is more Fender Rhodes, definitely don't like to put people in a box, but to keep it simple, more like a D'Angelo vibe, and he's in Detroit. You know, so you're in Flint. I was actually in Flint taking care of my father at the time, who had Alzheimer's disease, rest in peace to Daddy. And so it was easier for me just to go from Flint to Detroit, and basically wound up doing the Montreux Jazz Festival with him in Switzerland and UK Jazz Cafe. But Montreux Jazz Festival is probably one of my top moments, my number one moments, because I remember Daddy in the sunroom always listening to jazz and reggae, and I was like, who's that? Why does he sound like that? And he was like, that's Miles Davis. And who's that? Why does his hair look like that? And he was like, Lisa, that's Bob Marley. And definitely I just didn't even ask who's that. I would just walk around in the house and hear him saying while he's looking at the TV, Ellis Marsalis, you know, and I would just be like, you know, Wynton Marsalis. So the number 2 greatest moment for me is performing in Congo Square and many other venues, French Quarter Festival, and being on the album of the great Corey Henry and the Treme Funktet. I have so much love for the entire band and just Corey Henry as a human being. You know, I'll keep it real as a female. You know, my mother definitely instilled in me to hold myself down, keep God close, but, you know, just don't keep up with the Joneses and play games and have to, you know, and I see, unfortunately, sometimes, you know, not all, because there are some great females, you know, in the industry, but they're down here doing their thing, but sometimes you see females like play up that, you know, character or the sexy gimmick or all that. And there's nothing wrong with being sexy. I'm a woman, I'm down with all that. But I like to stand in my word and not have to deal with, you know, sometimes a little uncomfortable, you know, where I will check somebody. But I'm known for that too. They like, she would go off. But yeah, I don't play any of that. And with Corey and them, I never have to worry about being disrespected, being flirted with, when I'm really here to honor and respect where I am and what I'm doing. So I'm always saying that, like, oh, they're gentlemen. Corey is such a gentleman, you know. So respect to Corey Henry, and it's just always such a pleasure.
Yes,
my number one. My number two, next to singing at Montreux Jazz Fest, which is connected to my father. Rest in peace.
That's wonderful. We're actually gonna have Corey sit in this spot soon, the next couple of episodes. So yes, Corey's a great guy. So tell us your top 5 singers of all time.
What should be Aretha Franklin's my number 1. I love Aretha because I've heard her do everything, and like I said earlier, I'm about like smashing stereotypes, and I've heard Aretha do everything from gospel albums to jazz albums to R&B albums, of course, soul albums, house music. The cherry on top was when Luciano Pavarotti got sick and needed Aretha Franklin to fill in. I think it was the Oscars, and he asked her at the very last minute, the day of, can you come in and do this Italian opera, Nessa and Dorma, and she did it, and she made it her own. So that's my number 1. Number 2 is Mahalia Jackson, just for spiritual and just many, many reasons. Number 2 is Mahalia Jackson. I also love Betty Carter. She's an amazing jazz musician, jazz instrumentalist and vocalist. And she's originally from Flint, Michigan. And then number 4, I would say the great Dee Dee Bridgewater, who has also been a major mentor to me. If any of you guys are not up on Dee Dee, definitely Google Dee Dee Bridgewater. You will not regret it. And I guess number 5 would be, I would have to say Minnie Riperton, just because of the beauty of her voice and the spirit that you hear every time you hear a song by her.
Okay, that's a nice list. It's a nice list. Okay, so if there was one singer that you have not worked with yet that you could get the chance to work with, who would that person be?
One vocalist? Irma Thomas.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why?
Cause she's amazing. Period.
That's good enough for me. That's good enough for me. Okay, so Nick, what do you got for me?
Yeah, so you mentioned that you're from Flint, Michigan. How was like you and your family or community impacted by the water crisis that Flint recently faced?
I would say impacted a great deal. My parents, I say fortunately I missed them, but they passed away before all that happened. And I'm glad they weren't there to witness that. But I saw what it did to the people. I wasn't physically living. I was in and out visiting family. But I saw what it did. And I might be wrong, but I remember, because I'm definitely a YouTuber, seeing before this happened, there was a movie called, I think, 3 the Hard Way, and if I'm not mistaken. And it was like in the 1970s. I saw this clip, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I did see in the clip where there were politicians around like, hey, let's how are we gonna get rid of all this urban community? How are we gonna get rid of these people? It's getting out of control. And they were like, oh, just poison the water with lead. And they were like, really, lead? And they were like, yeah, the first thing it's gonna do is mess their heads up. And they were like, so we can just put the lead in the water and it's gonna affect the community? They were like, yeah. And I'll never forget, they said, you mean just like we did with sickle cell? And I was a kid like, really? Because what? So when this happened to Flint, that's the first thing I was telling everybody, like, hey, take cilantro. Hey, don't do this, take that. Because the first thing it's going to do is affect the neurological, you know. And now I see the chaos. I see the chaos of it. I see a lot of children, more children born with, not Alzheimer's, that, what is the word? The children born with,
ADHD?
Huh?
ADHD?
It's even more, what does it start with it?
Dementia?
Not the children, like when they're like, oh, autism.
Autism.
I see a lot more autistic children in the city of Flint. I see a lot of younger people. Reminds me of when I went to Utah, and they were a lot of young cats in their 20s, and they were missing teeth. But that was a meth situation. In Flint, you see that too, and it's a lead situation. And I've just seen a lot more violence increase and things of that nature. But I try my best to, you know, try to tell people, even when they had the packs of the bottles of the water outside, I'm like, hey, be careful with this. This is plastic. The sun is on this plastic. It's gonna get in the water. You drinking all that stuff's getting in your system. I'm not a perfectionist, you know, when it comes to what I put in my body. I try to be conscious, you know, and make sure I'm not, you know, a high percentage of the food and things that we take in America are outlawed outside of America. They're like illegal to sell in Europe and Switzerland because they know how toxic and harmful these things are. Now you add lead to the water, and then here, drink this bottled water that we put cases, hundreds and hundreds, sitting right in a parking lot in the sun. Yeah, drink that, you'll be fine. So I've seen, unfortunately, it affected and impact my city, you know, that I was born and raised in not such a great way.
So you mentioned earlier growing up listening to Bob Marley or having that plan. Did the message in Bob Marley music influence your artistry at all growing up, or just developing your artistry, should I say?
Yes, that and my parents, like watching my parents, but you know, his biggest message for me was one love. We can all, you know, be cool with one another and not all this, you know, divisiveness. I saw that with my parents' behavior, with how they dealt with people. But yeah, Bob Marley always, to me, brought me peace and like, yeah, you know, unification. That sounds and it feels like it feels right, you know.
So when it comes to like your own artistry, when you're in the studio, when you're about to record, like what's that process for you? Like what's your process to get you in that vibe to like create?
For me, it happens before I go in the studio because I'm so thankful and excited every time I go in the studio. I heard Shaka Khan say this when I was, again, another little girl. I like to have everything done, the melodies, the lyrics. I know what I'm doing because I want, and I heard Shaka say this and I was like, oh, I'm gonna do that, that's genius. She said, you know, when you go in the studio and you know exactly what you're gonna do, you're saving money for the engineer, money for the producer, time. You go in, and if you go in and knock out what you came in to knock out, those people will remember you. And then when they're thinking about the next projects, they're like, oh, let's get such and such, because it only took her an hour to come in and lay down her verse, vocals, harmonies, stack those tracks, outro, ad-libs. She killed it in an hour, and she saved us all this money. We didn't have to sit here, and I've seen that. I've been in studios and watched people like, okay, I'm here. I'm paying for my time. All right, where's my notebook and my pencil? And I just always looked at it like, in my head, so you're about to pay somebody to watch you, right? Like, what part of the game is that? You know, that never made sense to me. So I'll always be really, not knocking how everybody's got a different creative process, but for me, I just always wanted to represent and show how, that's my way of showing how grateful and thankful I am for every time I enter a booth.
And when it comes to your artistry through music, what do you want your fans to kind of like attach to your legacy or your body of work when it comes to music?
Free. I want them to feel like, oh, she's really free to not just stay in one genre or just that's it. And independent. I'm constantly like, yeah, I'm independent because again, watching, I believe we're supposed to learn from our ancestors and from people that come before us. And I learned when Prince was writing Slave on his face, like, oh, that's about the labels. And Mary J. Blige, who she'll tell the story, you know, even after her second album went platinum, both albums went platinum, she was still in the projects. That's how she got the scar. You know, she'll tell you that, like, yeah, I was in the projects. And they're like, yeah, you're all on this label and everybody knows your name, but you're still broke. And TLC saying, let us tell you and show you how you can sell 10 million albums and still go broke. Tony Braxton on Oprah Winfrey. Oprah, they took everything, even my Grammys. And so my whole mission and point since I can remember is to be like, no, I'm independent, you know, thanks to YouTube, hopefully it'll grow, but I have 24,000 subscribers, close to 6 million views, and that's just by me being organic. And I always proud, like, no one can say, I'm the reason why somebody knows you. I'm the reason why you did this. The only person that can get that credit is my creator.
What are some of the themes in life or in your own world that kind of like inspires your creativity? Like, what are some things that kind of, yeah, I gotta talk about this. I gotta kind of articulate this message.
Love, love, and then being proud of who you are. Shout out and respect to the great poets that I've also recorded with from the last poets. Shout out to Umar Ben Hassan and Jessica Care Moore and others, but being independent and being proud of who you are and not making excuses for it. Or I grew up where, yeah, I don't want to go too deep, but yeah, being proud of who you are.
So, switch gears really fast. So, any cross collaborations with the culture? Being here in New Orleans with the culture being on the rise, and you know, a lot of people tap into that on a regular, even here at the Backstreet, Sunday Second Lines, things like that. Any cross collaborations with the culture aside from just brass bands?
Yes, when you say yes, when you say, can you be more?
Yes, so meaning, have you worked with anybody else in the culture, whether it was Baby Dolls, whether it was Mardi Gras Indians, any hired performances you did that dealt with the culture itself?
Yeah, I guess when you say I haven't performed with the Mardi Gras Indians or the Baby Dolls, but I have a lot of respect for who they are and what they do. I've talked about it. I've been approached before by the Baby Dolls, one or two, like, hey, could you sing here? Yeah, absolutely. You know, it just never panned out. I've been approached a few times actually, but you know, I'm still here. The vocals work, so you know, anything I can contribute. You know, because that was the first thing I heard when you keep saying the culture, that I felt like when I first came here, a lot of the musicians, oh, everybody comes here and just steals our culture. And I was just like, what? You know, and they were like, yeah, they always take our culture. Like, what you mean? You know, and they were like, oh, they come here, they learn from us. And now I've seen it because I've been here long enough. Then they go over to Ohio or Wisconsin or, you know, we won't go to too many specific cities. And all of a sudden you do see them billed as New Orleans musicians, and you're like, oh, that's not, I try not to judge, but I'm like, man, that's not cool, you know. But so what I've always tried to do, regardless if it's not me specifically using my singing voice to help contribute and uplift and make some changes for the better, I have done it in other ways, such as I'm a producer of this documentary, Dirty Dogs, and it was these two executive producers that came to me about 3 years ago. I'm trying to speed this up. 3 years ago, and we're like, one was from E-Television, and the other, he owns a few restaurants in the quarter and does like producing or whatever for Bar Rescue and Naked and Afraid. And they brought to attention, we as a whole in the last 3 years brought to the attention of this insane rule and this insane law. Since the 1970s, only one food cart vendor was allowed in the French Quarter, and I thought that was insane. We all thought that was crazy, because when people get off the plane, nobody's like, all right, where are the hot dogs? They're looking for the gumbo, the etouffee, the crawfish, the po' boys. They're looking for a taste of New Orleans. So why would you keep all these? New Orleans is known for many things, but food is one of them. So why would you keep all the greats out of the French Quarter. So for the last 3 years, we went and had meetings with the city council, politicians, the mayor, blah, blah, blah. And make a long story short, as of November 2023, that law was overturned. And now there are 30, I repeat, 30 food permits available and licenses and for the French Quarter. And I did say in the meetings, I want to be very clear when I said, if you guys change this law, please don't just give out these permits to people that just moved here from Ohio, from Michigan, from this, because that would be a slap in the face to the people of New Orleans. Come on, respect the situation. And so shout out to Glizzy's by Papa. He was the first one, you know, out of 5. There are only 5 people that have taken advantage of that, but this is a chance for economic growth and possibility of brick and mortar. So shout out to Glizzy's. You can catch him on St. Louis and Bourbon Street, but so it might not be me collaborating a song, which I'm always open for, but any way that I can, like, okay, let me do the opposite of what I'm hearing them say. Like, they just come and take and go away and, take our name and take what we taught them. No, let me add, let me contribute whatever way I can. So that was one way, that I'm thankful when it comes to the culture,
Well said. Okay, tell us about any upcoming events that you have.
Yes, I will be performing at the Riverwalk the Spanish Plaza. There's a 10-week musical series, and my performance is September 26th. That's there, and most of the things I do here I sing, like I said, outside. You can catch me on Decatur. You can catch me on Royal, or you can catch me, well, you can't catch me, but I do a lot of private events, weddings, party, I'm performing this month at the Vu Carre Gala, as well as, but these are like private events, but publicly I'll be at the Riverwalk September 26th.
Okay. I see you brought some merch with you. Can you tell us a little bit about this merch?
Yes. Well, I have a social media presence. This is my Alicia Renee, aka Blue Eyes. What size you wear?
4X.
Okay. What size you wear?
Medium.
Okay. Oh, okay. Somebody don't nobody wear large. I wanted to open something.
Kyra.
Okay. So I have my Alicia Renee, aka Blue Eyes, New Orleans, live in New Orleans t-shirt. You can get it online, or you can get it in person. Basically, it's one of my things, because I have cups, aprons, everything online, but this is my Alicia Renee, aka Blue Eyes, live in New Orleans t-shirt, and on the back it has my QR code for you independent entrepreneurs. Get that QR code. And it says get to know me, scan here, where my website pops up, and that's where you can see me doing everything, like singing with James Andrews at the French Quarter Fest, or at Preservation Hall with the Preservation Hall Jazz Band, or on and on and on. And this is my album. It's my CD. Some people might be like, oh, she's got a CD. We're not in the 80s. Whatever. It's my Live at the New Orleans Jazz Museum album. I have plenty albums on my website. Christmas in New Orleans. Just many things. Live, Alicia Renee, aka Blue Eyes, live at the Dewdrop. Jazz and Social Hall, that was in Mandeville. The time I performed at the newest Dewdrop was here with Corey Henry. But yeah, this is my tribute to Louis Armstrong, Billie Holiday, Nina Simone, Ray Charles, and Roy Hargrove. And again, back to what I was always hearing, like, they just come and take. So I was like, okay, I'm going on my way to make sure when I hire people, they're always from New Orleans, like born and raised, not just like, yeah, I'm from Wisconsin, respect to Wisconsin. But so I have Julian Gosson on trumpet, Chris Royal on saxophone, Stephen Walker on trombone, Z2, Kermit's pianist on keyboard, Chris Severin on bass, Buddha, Glenn Finister Andrews on drums, and Shannon Powell also, because it's a mixture, a combination of two performances, and Dave Kanowski. So I try my best to, make it very, New Orleans based, and, if I'm going to spend money where you live, spend it in the community and respect the community. So I have this, my albums, my shirts,
Okay. So go ahead and tell the people where they can find this, your Instagram, your website.
Okay, my Instagram is one word. It is, because it just wouldn't let me say Alicia Renee, aka Blue Eyes. But it's Blue Eyes, B as in basketball. My friend from Detroit gave me this spelling. He was like, Blue, you're born with natural blue eyes and you speak 5 languages. So French, Spanish, Italian, je parle français, io parlo italiano, e sprego dorsiale, español un poquito, and English. So that's 5 languages. So he named the spelling Blue Eyes. B is in basketball, Luuwise. That's my Instagram, Blue Eyes. B is in basketball, Luuwise. And everywhere else, my Facebook, my YouTube, my website, it's literally Alicia Renee, aka Blue Eyes. That's ALICIARENEE, aka Blue Eyes. Again, Alicia Renee, aka Blue Eyes.
Okay, so we cannot let you leave Backstreet Culture Museum without giving us a little note. Please, my favorite singer is Whitney Houston.
Oh, okay. Well, I wouldn't need to stand for that. But okay, all right.
Stand.
If I should stay, I would only be in your way. But I'll go, 'cause I know I'll think of you every step of the way. Should have had some water first. And I will always love you. I will always love you.
Woo!
She red like cherry red in the cheeks.
That's my singer, that's my song. So
Great
we
job.
want to thank you, and we appreciate you for coming tune in with us at Keep It In the Culture podcast at the Backstreet, the beautiful and talented songstress, Alicia Renee.
Make some
Hey.
noise.